What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, in this offseason, a lot of Detroit Lions fans have raised the question whether or not David Blough is going to be the quarterback to lead the Detroit Lions in the future, and whether or not he is good enough to be the Detroit Lions franchise quarterback after Matthew Stafford leaves this organization. Now, in today's video, we are going to be talking about David Blough, talking about what he did at the college level, what he's done at the pro level, and just kind of talk about what, whether or not he can become the future franchise quarterback for the Detroit Lions and lead them to success in the future when Matthew Stafford eventually moves on from this organization. Now, before we do get into the video, if you are new to the channel and are enjoying the content, consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel, as it takes only 2 seconds out of your day to make mine, and I'd be very, very appreciative to everybody that chooses to do so. But with that being said, let's get into talking about David Blough and whether or not he can become the franchise quarterback for the future. Now, David Blough was an undrafted free agent out of the University of Purdue after the 2019 NFL Draft. Now, in his tenure with the Purdue Boilermakers, he passed for 9,734 passing yards, 69 passing touchdowns, while throwing 43 interceptions. Now, David Blough signed with the Cleveland Browns shortly after the 2019 NFL Draft concluded and had a fairly solid preseason with them. David Blough completed 25 of his 43 pass attempts, passing for 271 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in the preseason with the Cleveland Browns. Now, that was good enough for the Detroit Lions to decide to make a trade for David Blough, as they sent a 2022 undisclosed NFL draft pick to the Cleveland Browns, and in turn received David Blough and another 2022 undisclosed NFL draft pick. That's kind of how he got on the Detroit Lions. That's kind of a brief history on how he got here. But what did he do with the Detroit Lions? Now, David Blough sat the bench for the first 13 weeks of the 2019 NFL season, sitting behind Matthew Stafford, who was playing at an elite level, and Jeff Driscoll, who did not. Now, after the Detroit Lions Week 12 matchup, both Matthew Stafford and Jeff Driscoll ended up on injured reserve, which forced David Blough to step into a key role for the Detroit Lions, being the starting quarterback on Thanksgiving Day in Detroit. Now, in the 5 games he played for the Detroit Lions in the 2019 season, David Blough played fairly well, as he completed 94 of his 174 pass attempts for a 54% completion percentage, 984 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Now, he was sacked 14 times in those 5 games and had an 0-5 record, so he was not quite able to get a victory with the Detroit Lions or as the starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions, but he did show a lot of really, really good qualities and a lot of really good things that, shows me that he could potentially develop into being the future quarterback for the Detroit Lions. Now, looking at some of his advanced stats, David Blough had 6 of his passes batted at the line of scrimmage, 6 of his passes were dropped by wide receivers, and 101 of his passes were on target, which was 60%. So if you look at his completion percentage just at that, 54, you're going to say, that's not very good. That's pretty bad. Almost 50% of your passes were incomplete, but a lot of them weren't necessarily his fault. 101 of those passes were on target, so that means the passes were either broken up or, the wide receiver didn't turn in time or, something like that, but they were on target. They were catchable by the wide receivers, and then 6 of his passes were dropped by wide receivers. 101 of his passes were on target, which is fairly good. 60%, that's still not quite, where you want your quarterback to be, but 60% completion percentage for an undrafted free agent rookie quarterback who wasn't supposed to see the field isn't that bad. And, David Blough had his mistakes, but he also, made a lot of really, really good throws, a lot of really good NFL throws that, showed me that he has the potential to become the next great quarterback for the Detroit Lions. Now, as I mentioned, David Blough did throw 6 interceptions for the Detroit Lions in his 2019 campaign. However, some of those interceptions weren't necessarily his fault, and the stats look a lot worse than he actually played. Now, David Blough's first interception was a Hail Mary versus the Chicago Bears, where there were no timeouts left. The Detroit Lions were down by 4. They needed a play. It was 4th down and 30 something. It was a 4th down conversion, 30 seconds left on the clock, no timeouts. David Blough was under pressure. He just threw it up to Kenny Galladay, and Eddie Jackson made the interception. I'm not going to hold that against him because, the chance of converting a Hail Mary is very unlikely, especially when the guy is double covered. So, I can't really hold that interception against David Blough because he was just trying to throw it up and give his receiver a chance, and, it ended up being an interception. It wasn't necessarily a bad read or a bad throw. It just, Hail Mary is usually ended interceptions like that. Then the second interception he threw was in his second game against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Now, that interception came midway through the third quarter when David Blough rolled out and he was looking to find Kenny Galladay across the middle, and he was hit by Everson Griffin as he was releasing the ball, which caused an overthrow and an interception. Again, I don't really hold that against David Blough because he made the right decision. He made the correct read. He was, in the process of throwing the ball to Kenny Galladay, and the offensive line allowed him to get hit, which made the ball come out high, which made him overthrow Kenny Galladay and ended in an interception. Again, I do not hold that against David Blough because he made the right decision, the right read. He did everything correct. The offensive line just let him down and allowed him to get hit, which, as I said, caused the overthrow. Then his third interception was again against the Minnesota Vikings in that same game. Fourth quarter, 30 seconds left. The game was pretty much out of reach. They had David Blough throw a last-second Hail Mary once again, and it got picked off by the Minnesota Vikings, just like the Chicago Bears one. There's not a lot to nitpick here. He just, he threw a Hail Mary, and it ended up being intercepted. It wasn't his fault. It just, usually Hail Marys don't end in touchdowns. More likely than not, they end in interceptions. So again, those first three interceptions that he threw in the NFL, I do not hold against David Blough because he did not do anything wrong on those plays. However, he was not without fault, as with his fourth interception, it was a pretty bad overthrow. He had a fairly clean pocket. He wasn't being hit. He was under pressure a little bit. One of the defensive linemen was reaching out, but, he wasn't being touched. He wasn't being hit. David Blough just overthrew the wide receiver by a little bit, and it was intercepted. Now, the wide receiver did get a hand on it, so it wasn't a horrible overthrow, but it was still an overthrow, which led to an interception. That one is on him. Again, I think he made the correct read. However, the throw just came out a little high, a little inside, and it made it tough for the wide receiver to catch, and it ended in an interception. So that one, I will say, was his fault. Then the fifth interception was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which pretty much sealed the game as they took it back for a pick six. Now, on this interception, David Blough was anticipating Danny Amendola to come out on an out route. He was expecting Amendola to break, and Amendola did. However, he was not expecting the cornerback in Sean Murphy-Bunting to break with Danny Amendola. He threw an anticipatory throw, and, Sean Murphy-Bunting just followed Amendola and got an easy interception and pretty much walked uncontestedly into the end zone. It wasn't necessarily a poor decision or a bad, thought process. You expect when your wide receiver breaks, as he's breaking, you expect him to be open. I don't think David Blough was expecting Sean Murphy-Bunting to break on the ball quite like he did. So, it was a bad, it was an interception. It was on him, but at the same time, he had a solid thought process. He thought through, and he's like, Amendola's going to be open as soon as he breaks. I got to throw it. He threw it at the right time. If Sean Murphy-Bunting hadn't been running in that direction as David Blough was releasing the ball, if, Murphy-Bunting had even stopped for a second, it would have been a completion. It was just a great play by the defensive back, but that is, again, one that we have to hold against David Blough because it was an interception that was very preventable. Now, his sixth and final interception was probably the worst one. I don't even know what he was doing. The wide receiver the only wide receiver that was in frame was a good 10 yards, past the ball. Like, he massively underthrew it. He threw it right to Blake Martinez of the Green Bay Packers, and, it was just a really, really bad throw, and that's one that I have to hold against him. So 3 of his interceptions were really, really bad, or 2 of his interceptions were really bad. One had solid thought process. It was just a great play by the defensive back, and 3 of them really weren't David Blough's fault, as 2 of them were Hail Marys, and 1 of them he was being hit and the ball came out high. So, looking at that, so if you take those 2 interceptions off the board even, or if you take those 3 interceptions off the board, that's 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, which looks much, much better, and I think that's more realistic of what he actually played as. So, you could say he threw 6 interceptions, but 3 of them really didn't count, so you can't really say that David Blough is a turnover machine and that he throws interceptions all the time because, I think the stats make that look a lot worse than it did, and it's not like David Blough was just throwing dink and dunk passes. It's not like he was throwing a ton of checkdowns. David Blough was throwing a lot of intermediate, a lot of deep passes to Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones and Danny Amendola. David Blough had an 8.5 intended air yards per pass attempt, which would have ranked 12th in the NFL. And what that means is every pass attempt averaged 8.5 yards in the air. So, it's not like he was throwing quick checkdowns that were 1 yard past the line of scrimmage. No, his passes averaged 8.5 yards in the air past the line of scrimmage every time he passed the ball. So he was throwing it deep. He was, laying it out to Kenny Galladay. He was giving Marvin Jones and Amendola and Galladay chances over the middle, 20, 30, even, we also saw in his second play, 75 yards downfield. Like, he was throwing really tough passes. He was making a lot of really, really good throws, and, it's not some, it wasn't something I was expecting to see out of David Blough. When you start a third string quarterback, a rookie out of Purdue that went undrafted, you don't expect him to be throwing dimes. You don't expect him to be, rolling out and throwing across, you don't expect him to be rolling out and making a really good throw on the run to Kenny Galladay across the middle. You don't expect him to be throwing, you don't expect him to be throwing bombs to Kenny Galladay on the second pass of his NFL career. And he did that because the coaching staff had the confidence in David Blough to allow him to do that. They allowed David Blough to really control the playbook, and they really didn't have to take a step back. They really didn't have to take anything out of the playbook because David Blough was able to make most of the plays that was asked of him. Now, David Blough does not have the strongest arm in the NFL. He's not anywhere near Matthew Stafford, but he does have a strong enough arm to make a majority of the throws. We saw the one on Kenny Galladay. It was slightly underthrown, but it was still thrown good enough where Kenny Galladay was able to catch it in stride and take it to the house for a 75-yard touchdown. It was slightly underthrown, but at the same time, who cares if it's slightly underthrown as long as it's thrown well enough where your wide receiver can make a play on the ball and take it in for a touchdown. There was a couple against the Chicago Bears where, he threw it and it was slightly underthrown, but it was still a completion. It was still a good read. It was still a solid throw. And, we would like to see a little bit more zip on the ball. We'd like to see it, maybe be up by the wide receiver's chest and, make it so the wide receiver doesn't necessarily have to dive for it. But at the same time, it was still a completion. It was still a first down, and it still moved the chains and extended the drive. So, in my opinion, David Blough has the tools. David Blough has, he is a very solid quarterback. He is really, really good. I really think that he could win the backup job over Chase Daniels because, what I saw out of David Blough in the 2019 season was a young, confident quarterback that can make a lot of NFL throws. He's going to make some mistakes sometimes, but that's what you expect out of any rookie. I don't care if it's Joe Burrow. I don't care if it's David Blough. Whether you're the first pick in the NFL draft or you're undrafted, you're going to make rookie mistakes. And we did see those out of David Blough last year, but a lot of times in the NFL games that he started, David Blough was a solid starting quarterback, and he was not the reason we lost a lot of football games without Matthew Stafford. It was not David Blough's fault that he went 0-5. Did he contribute to that? Yeah, he made some mistakes, he made some poor decisions, but at the same time, he also put the Detroit Lions in a lot of opportunities to get the lead. He also, he took the lead in a lot of Detroit Lions games. He led the offense down and scored touchdowns and, had really big drives, and he extended the drives with really big first down conversions. And, it wasn't necessarily David Blough's fault that they went 0-5 and ended this season 0-5. So, I do think he has the skill set. I do think that he could potentially become the Detroit Lions starting quarterback. He definitely has some things to work on, which I expect to come with NFL experience and just more playing time. He was a rookie last year. He's only played in 5 games. So, growing pains are expected. But what I saw out of him shows me that he has the capacity to be a starting quarterback. He made really good NFL throws. He made really good NFL decisions. He played like an NFL quarterback, and with time under Matthew Stafford to groom and he doesn't have to start now. Just saying that he is the quarterback for the future doesn't mean that he's going to start next year or in the 2021 season. He could not even start for 5 more years depending on how long Matthew Stafford's here. But when Matthew Stafford does leave, then, even if he doesn't start for 5 years, that's 5 years of development where David Blough is going to learn to make better decisions. He's going to learn, how to be better. He's not going to make those rookie mistakes. He's not going to make those poor throws. He can work on his accuracy. He can, work on some of his decision making, and he is going to be a better NFL quarterback as he progresses and as he gets more experience in the NFL. So the answer to the title of the video is yes. I do think David Blough could potentially become the starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions after Matthew Stafford leaves this organization. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think David Blough could potentially, compete and become that starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions after the Matthew Stafford era in Detroit? Let me know that down in the comments down below. But with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. If you are new to the channel, as I said, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel, as it only takes 2 seconds out of your day to make mine. I'd be very appreciative to everybody that chooses to do that and help out my channel. But with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. If there is Lions news before tomorrow, I'll obviously make a video letting every single person know. But until then, I will see all of you guys tomorrow with more Detroit Lions content. Hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.